Hello and welcome to the show. Today we're talking about something that might make your passport sweat a little. We're talking about countries that have, shall we say, shown Americans the door, and the reasons behind these international evictions. Now you might be thinking, John, surely you're exaggerating. Countries wouldn't just kick out Americans, would they? And to that I say, oh my sweet summer child, you clearly haven't been paying attention to the news cycle. Or maybe you have, but you've been distracted by, the literal dumpster fire of everything else happening. So buckle up, because we're about to take a trip around the world, visiting countries that have decided, for various reasons, that Americans might need to pack their suitcases and head back to the good old US of A. We're talking diplomatic standoffs, political tensions, and situations so bizarre, you'll wonder if we're living in a real-life episode of The Americans, except with less espionage and more, well, you'll see. Get ready to have your assumptions challenged, your worldview expanded, and maybe, just maybe, your faith in international diplomacy shaken to its core. This is going to be fun. First stop on our world tour of You Can't Sit With Us is Russia. Now, the relationship between the US and Russia is about as stable as a unicycle on an ice rink. We're talking decades of mistrust, espionage, and enough nuclear warheads to turn the planet into a radioactive wasteland. But lately, things have gotten a bit chillier. Remember that whole Russians meddling in US elections thing? Yeah, that didn't exactly help matters. In retaliation for US sanctions, Russia decided to expel American diplomats, essentially telling them, we're taking our diplomatic football and going home. This tit-for-tat expulsion game isn't exactly new for these two superpowers. It's like a really passive-aggressive tennis match, except instead of tennis balls, they're lobbing diplomats back and forth over the net. And the crowd? The rest of the world watching with a mixture of amusement and terror. So if you're an American diplomat in Russia, you better pack light, learn to love borscht, and maybe invest in a good VPN. Because you never know when you might find yourself on the next flight back to Dulles, wondering what the hell just happened. Of course, it's not just diplomats who felt the chill of Russia's displeasure. Remember Brittany Griner, the WNBA star who was detained in Russia for months on drug charges? What might have seemed like a minor offense in other parts of the world became a major international incident, with the US government scrambling to secure her release. Now, some might argue that Griner's case was more about political bargaining chips than actual justice. And they might have a point. After all, using detainees as pawns in a larger geopolitical game is a tactic straight out of the Cold War playbook. But regardless of the motivations, the message was clear. Russia wasn't afraid to play hardball, even if it meant using a high-profile American citizen as leverage. It was a stark reminder that navigating the complexities of international relations can sometimes feel like walking through a minefield while blindfolded. So, the next time you're thinking of adding Moscow to your travel bucket list, maybe double-check the current state of US-Russia relations. And if you do decide to go, pack your sense of humor, a healthy dose of skepticism, and maybe a lawyer just in case. Next up on our whirlwind tour of international awkwardness, we find ourselves in China, a country that's no stranger to complicated relationships with the good old US of A. We're talking about a country that went from playing ping-pong with Nixon to engaging in trade wars with Trump. Talk about a relationship status update for the ages. But beyond the economic squabbles and diplomatic dance-offs, there's another layer to this story, one that involves journalists, academics, and a whole lot of suspicion. You see, China has been cracking down on foreign journalists and researchers, accusing them of, well, basically being up to no good. This crackdown has resulted in a number of Americans being expelled from China, often on vague accusations of espionage or, my personal favorite, endangering national security. Now, I'm no expert in international espionage, but I'm pretty sure endangering national security is code for asking too many questions about things the Chinese government would rather not talk about. And while the Chinese government might argue that they're just protecting their national interests, it's hard not to see this as part of a larger trend of increasing authoritarianism and control over information. Because let's be honest, nothing says open and transparent society like kicking out journalists and academics for doing their jobs. Section 2. The Curious Case of the Unwanted Teachers. But it's not just journalists and academics who found themselves on the wrong side of China's tightening grip. Even those tasked with teaching English, a seemingly innocuous profession, haven't been immune to the crackdown. In recent years there have been reports of American English teachers being detained, interrogated, and even deported from China. Now, you might be wondering, what could these teachers possibly have done to warrant such treatment? Well, according to some reports, their supposed crimes range from having tattoos to using VPNs to access blocked websites. Because, nothing screams threat to national security like a butterfly tattoo and a desire to watch cat videos on YouTube. But jokes aside, these incidents highlight the increasingly precarious position of foreigners in China, particularly those from countries with strained relations with Beijing. It's a stark reminder that even seemingly harmless activities can be misconstrued or used as a pretext for expulsion, in a country where the lines between acceptable and unacceptable behavior can shift like the sands of the Gobi Desert. So, if you're an American in China, particularly one with a penchant for body art and uncensored internet access, you might want to tread carefully. Because in the current climate, even the most innocuous actions could land you in hot water, or worse, on a one-way flight back to the land of the free. So Venezuela, land of beautiful beaches, delicious arepas, and a government that seems to have a love-hate relationship with the United States. In recent years, that passion has manifested in some pretty serious ways, including showing American citizens the door. This is about Nicolás Maduro, the current president of Venezuela, deciding he's had enough of the imperio meddling in his country's affairs. And look, I'm not saying Maduro is a saint. The man's got a human rights record that would make a dictator blush. He started giving American citizens the boot. Not literally, of course, but the bureaucratic way, revoking visas, denying entry permits. But things really came to a head in 2013, in what can only be described as a diplomatic incident worthy of a Wes Anderson film. It involved 7 American citizens, all working for the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID. Now USAID is a bit of a tricky one. On the surface, they're all about providing aid to developing countries, building schools, digging wells, the whole humanitarian shebang. But they've also been accused of being a front for the CIA, using aid money to further U.S. foreign policy goals. And let's just say in Venezuela, they weren't exactly handing out USAID-branded tote bags filled with sunshine and rainbows. See, Maduro was convinced that USAID was funding opposition groups in Venezuela, trying to destabilize his government and orchestrate a coup. Now is that true? Well, USAID has certainly been known to dabble in regime change in the past, but in this case, they were adamant that their work in Venezuela was purely humanitarian. But Maduro wasn't buying it. He accused the USAID workers of being spies, of using humanitarian aid as a cover to undermine his government. And in a move that surprised absolutely no one, he expelled them from the country, giving them 48 hours to pack their bags and leave. Now let's hop across the pond, or rather the Aegean Sea, to Turkey. This is a country that's no stranger to political turmoil, sitting as it does at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, a melting pot of cultures, religions, and historical grudges that go back centuries. But for a long time, Turkey was a reliable ally of the United States, a key member of NATO, and a bulwark against Soviet influence during the Cold War. But in recent years, that relationship has become, shall we say, complicated. It's like watching a couple try to salvage a marriage after one of them went on a bender and woke up with a face tattoo of their new, much younger partner. And by bender, I mean attempted coup, and by face tattoo, I mean increasingly authoritarian policies. At the heart of this growing rift is Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Turkey's president, a man who seems to view democracy and freedom of speech with the same enthusiasm I reserve for finding a rogue lentil in my salad. Under Erdogan's rule, Turkey has cracked down on dissent, jailed journalists, and generally made it clear that anyone who dares to criticize the government will be dealt with swiftly and harshly. And the U.S.? Well, we've been less than thrilled with this turn of events. We've criticized Erdogan's human rights record, voiced concerns about his increasingly authoritarian tendencies, and generally made it clear that we're not exactly fans of his leadership style, and that, my friends, is the diplomatic equivalent of poking a bear with a very pointy stick. In 2016, American pastor Andrew Brunson found himself at the center of a diplomatic firestorm. Living in Turkey for over 2 decades, he ran a small Protestant church. After the coup attempt, foreigners became suspicious in Erdogan's eyes. Brunson was arrested, accused of espionage and terrorism. The evidence was flimsy, based on secret witnesses and vague allegations. The U.S. demanded his release, imposing sanctions. Turkey accused the U.S. of meddling, using Brunson as a bargaining chip. The standoff lasted 2 years, straining U.S.-Turkey relations. And now, for our penultimate stop on this world tour of places Americans are decidedly not welcome, we arrive in North Korea. Yes, that North Korea. The one often described as hermetic and unpredictable. North Korea isn't exactly known for its open-door policy. Even if you get in, don't expect a relaxing vacation. Think more along the lines of a tightly controlled tour. The tragic case of Otto Warmbier led to a U.S. travel ban on North Korea. So, while North Korea isn't technically kicking out Americans on a case-by-case basis, like some of the other countries on our list, their actions speak louder than a dictator's loudspeaker at a military parade. They've effectively made it impossible for Americans to even set foot in the country. And you know what? It's hard to blame them, from a certain point of view. The U.S. and North Korea have a history that's, shall we say, complicated. It's the kind of relationship where you awkwardly avoid eye contact at a party, and then spend the rest of the night whispering snide remarks about each other's outfits. There have been attempts to thaw the icy relations, with former President Trump famously meeting with Kim Jong-un in 2018, marking the first meeting between sitting leaders of the two countries. Optimism, however, was in short supply, as the talks ultimately fizzled out like a poorly made bottle rocket. The relationship remains as tense as ever, and the chances of Americans being welcomed back to North Korea anytime soon are about as likely as me winning a staring contest with a portrait of Kim Il-sung. It's just not going to happen. Next up on our geopolitical pub crawl of no Yanks allowed, we find ourselves in Iran, a country with a rich history, beautiful landscapes, and a relationship with the United States that could be charitably described as frosty. Now, unlike some of the other countries on our list, Iran hasn't outright banned all Americans from entering. They have, however, made it abundantly clear that we're not exactly their favorite flavor of tourist. Think of it like this: they'll grudgingly let you into the restaurant, but they'll seat you at the worst table, accidentally spill water on you, and forget to bring you a menu. The roots of this animosity run deep, going all the way back to the 1953 coup d'etat, where the US and the UK orchestrated the overthrow of Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. It's a bit of a sore subject, to put it mildly, and one that continues to cast a long shadow over US-Iran relations. Fast forward a few decades, and things went from bad to worse with the 1979 Iranian Revolution and the subsequent hostage crisis, where 52 American diplomats and citizens were held captive for 444 days. It was a tense standoff that played out on the world stage and only served to further solidify the animosity between the two nations. In recent years, tensions have escalated further due to disagreements over Iran's nuclear program and ongoing sanctions imposed by the United States. It's a complex geopolitical chess match, and unfortunately, ordinary citizens often get caught in the crossfire. While it's still technically possible for Americans to obtain a visa to visit Iran, it's not for the faint of heart. The application process is notoriously difficult, requiring extensive paperwork, interviews, and a healthy dose of luck. And even if you do manage to secure a visa, you can expect to be closely monitored by the authorities during your stay. Adding another layer of complexity to the mix is the issue of currency. Due to US sanctions, American credit cards are about as useful as a chocolate teapot in Iran. This means you'll need to arrive with a suitcase full of cash, which, let's be honest, isn't exactly the most practical or safe way to travel. So, while Iran may not have a big, flashing neon sign that says Americans keep out, they've certainly made it clear that we're not exactly welcome with open arms. It's a country best admired from afar, at least for the time being. So, there you have it. 6 countries, 6 very different reasons for giving Americans the diplomatic cold shoulder. Some are driven by political tensions, others by security concerns, and a few, perhaps, by a healthy dose of good old-fashioned xenophobia. Whatever the reason, it's a stark reminder that the world is a complicated place, and our American passports, while undeniably useful, don't magically grant us access to every corner of the globe. Sometimes the door is slammed shut, and we're left to ponder the reasons why. Thanks for watching. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Let us know in the comments which country surprised you the most.